Please go ahead, sir. We are live now.
Good morning, Namaskar, and Jai Hind. Welcome again to another edition of the webinars in the series Illness to Wellness. Today we are having a very important and a very interesting topic, and this topic is a topic which is going to touch the heart and soul of each and every one of you. The topic is myths and facts of coronavirus vaccination. We know we've all been affected by corona. I'm not going to talk about it, but finally at the end of the tunnel there's hope, there's light, and that everyone considers is the vaccine of corona. The vaccination drive, the first drive has already started and lakhs of people have already been vaccinated. This is all good news, but still there are a lot of myths, there are a lot of misconceptions. People actually don't understand what is vaccine. The laymen who are going to be vaccinated in the coming months or weeks. So we are going to have a very interesting discussions with I would say stars of the subjects who know very well, who've been using and who understand the vaccines, how they work, and they're going to enlighten us about the vaccine. And in order to start, I would request Shri Anil Rajputji sir to give an introduction and start the webinar. He is the chairman of the CSR committee of ASSOCHAM, the organizer of this webinar. Welcome, sir. Rajput sir, please start.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kesri, for your kind words. It's my proud privilege to welcome such an eminent group of doctors on this very critical subject, which is close to everybody's heart today, after what we have gone through in the last 1 year. I'd like to welcome Dr. G.C. Khilnani, Chairman, PSRI Institute of Pulmonary Critical Care and Sleep Medicine, and former Head of Department of Pulmonary Medicine and Sleep Disorder, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Professor T. Jacob John, virologist and former professor at Christian Medical College, Vellore. Professor Damija, who's about to join us in a while, Head of Neurology, Department of Lady Hardinge Medical College. Dr. Rajesh Kesri, who has been helping us with this Illness to Wellness series for some time during this period of COVID, and he has been such a wonderful partner in this activity during the last 9 months, and he is a director, founder and director of Total Care Control. Distinguished participants and friends, we have in a few days leave behind the first month of the year, a month that has witnessed millions of vaccinations against the deadly COVID virus. Till just a few months ago, this virus was seen as a force that was becoming difficult to counter and was testing the resolve of humankind. In all this, it was our scientists and doctors who were determined to win this race against time. This resulted in multiple vaccines against this virus, and even more importantly, at a record pace. This proved that when pushed to the wall, we don't concede defeat, but gather all strength and courage and fight back. Today, we have reached a stage where, because of vaccination program all over the world, the pandemic is all set to become history of a sort in the months to follow. Till today, this virus has impacted over 97 million people, and there have been over 2.1 million deaths. The achievement of an effective vaccine against the COVID has led to the launch of world's biggest vaccination campaign. More than 63 million doses across 56 nations have been administered. with an average of 3.21 million doses a day. Most of these vaccinations offer an efficacy of 90% and upward. To put things in perspective, a normal flu shot is recommended for most as an efficacy of between 40% to 60%. Therefore, the effectiveness of protection that the COVID-19 vaccine provides is at another level altogether. World over, people have started to receive COVID shot from Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Sputnik. While allergic shocks have been reported, these have been isolated cases and account for a minuscule percentage as against those with no expected side effects. These vaccines have been certified to be safe by WHO, the US Food and Drug Administration, and the European Medicines Agency. India has its own domestically manufactured vaccines, namely Covaxin and the Oxford AstraZeneca called Covishield. India is the world's vaccine powerhouse, making 60% of world's vaccine and home to half a dozen major manufacturers. While Covaxin was approved by regulators for restrictive use in emergency situation in public interest, it has come a long way and has received approval from top medical professionals and regulators for use under normal vaccination process. An authority and part of Prime Minister's panel on COVID, Dr. Randeep Guleria, has termed both the vaccine and absolutely safe. People who have been spreading rumors like these vaccines cause infertility and more complications are doing grave disservice to humankind. They are clearly demotivating others and creating unnecessary hesitation and panic. The only thing that one needs to watch out for is the list of conditions under which the vaccine should not be administered, and these have been clearly spelled out by the vaccine manufacturers. We need to be clear that every vaccine carries the possibility of side effects. Approximately 2 million people have been vaccinated in India, and as long as overwhelming majority show mild or no side effects, to consider rare occurrence to adverse side effects over the benefits that these vaccines provide is, to my mind, nonsensical and illogical. We have the best of minds today available on this panel, and I am sure Dr. Rajesh Kesari would raise relevant questions to everybody so that any myths about the facts are brought out to all the listeners and participants who have joined us, who can further go and share this with the several people so that we all succeed against this deadly virus. I take this opportunity to wish this webinar a great success and my very best. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Rajput ji, for the kind introduction to the topic. That was very comprehensive and very interesting. At the very onset, I would like to thank and welcome again all our esteemed panelists, and I would like to give a short introduction, because comprehensive introduction for all distinguished panelists is going to be very long. We start with Professor Dr. T. Jacob John. He is a pediatrician trained in India, UK, and USA. He specialized in infectious disease. As faculty of Christian Medical College, Vellore, he established India's first diagnostic virology laboratory in 1967. Due to the pioneering research done in CMC in 1978, the Indian Council of Medical Research created a Center of Advanced Research in Virology with Jacob John as its director. Two major achievements of the center were designing and demonstrating the elimination of polio in Vellore through pulse immunization. That was way back in 1981 and 84, tracking down India's earliest HIV infection in 1986 and showing that the local transmission was mainly heterosexual, unlike in the West where it was homosexual. In 1986, the government of India established a National HIV/AIDS Research Center in CMC Vellore with Professor Jacob John as its director. The center established safe blood transfusion protocol and designed India's first highly successful HIV/AIDS control interventions under the National HIV/AIDS Task Force. In 1995, he retired from CMC as professor and head of department of clinical virology. ICMR appointed him as emeritus professor for 5 more years. After retirement, he continues as freelance scientist, educating peers and public on sociobiology, epidemiology, prevention, and control of infectious disease through vaccinations. Thank you so much for being with us. Once again, welcome, Professor Dr. T. Jacob John. We have other distinguished people with us. I would once again welcome Dr. J.C. Khilnani to the podium. Dr. Khilnani is the chairman of PSRI Institute of Pulmonary Critical Care and Sleep Medicine. Having 41 plus years of experience in this field, he was also head and professor of Department of Pulmonary Medicine and Sleep Disorders in All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. He is having expertise in pulmonary and critical care medicine and sleep medicine. Fellowship in critical care from Mount Sinai Medical School, New York, USA. He is the chairman of Credential Committee of Indian Society of Critical Care and Medicine and member governing body of Indian Chest Society. And he was vice president of National College of Chest Physicians from 2007 to 2009, president for 2 terms of National College of Chest Physicians from 2011 to 13, and chairman Credential Committee of Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine. He's been a member of Council of Regents for 7 years of American College of Chest, member Executive Council of Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine 2006, and member governing body of Indian Chest Society. He is also senior editor of Critical Care, Lung India, and member of many editorial boards like Journal of Critical Care Medicine, Indian Journals of Chest and Allied Sciences. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. Once again, welcome, Dr. J.C. Khilnani. Next, we have with us Dr. Rajinder K. Dahuja. He welcome, sir, again. Graduated in medicine in 1986 and MD medicine in 1990 from Rohtak Medical College. He is trained in neurology in India and Australia. He did his DNB, FRECP from Australia and with FRCP from UK. He established neurology department at LHMC Lady Hardinge Medical College and is presently director professor of medicine, head of medical unit and head of neurology department at Lady Hardinge Medical College and FSK Hospital. Dr. Dahuja is also senior fellow as well as PhD examiner for Melbourne University, Australia. He is also international advisor for Royal College of Physicians, London in India. He was awarded the 33rd S. Radhakrishnan Memorial Medical Teacher Award in 2017. He is advisor for UPSC, Public Service Commission, UGC, and co-chair expert group PG and assessor for MCA and faculty and examiner National Board of Examinations, examiner for MBBS and MD for various universities. He has more than 70 peer-reviewed publications and book chapters. He has been invited to present papers and done lectures in most of the countries of the world. I would say there's a long list of countries. He is chair SIG on movement disorders in World Federation of Neurorehabilitation. He's also been the personal physician to Honorable Prime Minister of India from 2000 to 2004. He's a reviewer for more than 20 journals, including Stroke, Journal of Stroke, and Cerebrovascular Disease. And welcome again, Dr. Rajinder K. Dahuja. Thank you all for coming here. I would like to start today's session with a shloka. We must have heard it all the time, but it is very pertinent to today's topic. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamso ma jyotirgamaya, nityo ma amritam gamaya. The last line from this shloka is very relevant to today's discussion that we have a vaccine, we have an agent which can take us from from the ill effects of the disease towards light, towards life, and towards happiness. So welcome all once again. To set the ball rolling, I'd first put up this question to everyone present here. So have you all taken the vaccine? Who has taken the vaccine?
Yeah.
Well, that's very enlightening. I would have liked to raise my hand, but I'm sorry I cannot because my number has not come yet. I've been calling, asking, but they say that you have to wait. Your center's in line. So thank you for so much. That means that most of us believe in the vaccine and are very eager and keen to take the vaccine. That is very important fact. May I start with Dr. John? Sir, could you please simply explain to our viewers what is a vaccine? Why is it required and how does it help? Because I'm sure many of us don't actually understand what is a vaccine, even though there's a lot of talk going on about it.
Thank you, Dr. Kesri, Dr. Khelnani, Dr. Hamija, Anil Rajput, and my dear colleagues. When a virus infects your body, we look for three things. Where does the virus grow, multiply, and where does it go? To which organs? How much? Does it get shed so that others get infected? So that's one avenue that we look for. The second is the virus causes pathology, disease, damage to tissues and organs. What are they? Can we mitigate them? And can you treat them? The third is silent as far as everybody knows. The immune system is genetically prepared to meet any microbe that invades the body and responds to it immunologically. Very silent. Nobody knows anything about what's going on. The immunological response has two attributes. One, you present any microbe, immune system will respond. This coronavirus is absolutely new for human race. Immune system has been prepared to meet any eventuality. It will respond, and it will respond fairly robustly. The second attribute of the immune system is that once it has responded, that memory will be kept by the immune system. This memory is not like the memory in the brain. This memory is we are using the word memory because we don't have another word to use for it, so that the experience is not forgotten and it can be built upon later on. So then we scientists explored as to what part of the microbe is the immune system responding. And we know that the immune system responds to certain extrinsic, structural, or intrinsic parts of the microbe. And if you synthesize or take that particular antigen and introduce, the immune system responds as if the infectious agent was there. And once you respond like this, you have immunity and with memory. So next time when the virus comes around, the body is immediately alerted. It has not seen the virus before. It has only seen the antigens before, and the body responds. So that is the principle of creating vaccines and vaccination. If you get infected, you have the risk of disease. If you give only the vaccine, you don't have the risk of disease, but you have the benefit of immune response and immune memory for some time. For some viruses, it is short-lived. For some viruses, it is long-lived. Okay, so the vaccines work in mimicking nature, making the immune system respond, keeping that response memory and keeping the antibody and the T cell immunity, the two arms of immune responses, alerted for future need. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. It was just coming to my mind an analogy that मोहल्ले में एक नया चोर आया और पुलिस ने उसका रिकॉर्ड बना के रख दिया उसकी हरकत देख के, जब अगली बार सर उठाएगा तो उसको धर पकड़ेंगे. Is it something like that? I understand. Dr. Thamija, I would like to come to you. We've been seeing vaccinations being given to our children. जब हम छोटे थे हमको भी वैक्सीन लगी है. मुझे अभी तक याद है कितना चिल्लाते थे, कितना रोते थे. We would not like to go to pediatrician. This is a new concept, but what do you say? Do people readily accept vaccines, or there's something called hesitancy? People don't want to take vaccines. Have you noticed any such phenomenon, sir? What would you like to say about it?
Thank you very much, Professor Jam and Mr. Rajput and Dr. Casey and all others for inviting us for the second time and interacting with you guys. It has been a wonderful experience. Thank you once again. So coming to vaccines and vaccinology and vaccine hesitancy, the vaccines have been there for a long time now, and we have eradicated diseases like smallpox and polio very successfully from our country, not only from our country, from the universe. So the vaccine have a major role to play. Vaccine is given to prevent the disease as compared to the other drugs and other medicines which are used for treatment. So the basic difference is vaccines are given to the healthy people. So that is very important when we talk about authorizations and approvals and regulatory authorities and the rigorous and clinical trials. So vaccine has to be given to a healthy individuals most of the time. So obviously you need to be a little more careful. That is why people are a little reluctant, and it has been seen vaccine hesitancy as one of the three major causes of global health concerns as described by WHO last year. So apart from air pollution, climate change, and vaccine hesitancy, these are the three main global health concerns as outlined by the WHO, in addition to 7 others also. And it has been seen in most of the world. 90% of the countries do have vaccine hesitancy. सब जगह पे थोड़ी reluctance जरूर होती है, because जो people they have it's human nature, human behavior कि थोड़ा हम चेंज करने के लिए, कोई भी नई चीज आने के लिए हम थोड़ा सा सोचते हैं. चाहे आपने अपना घर बदलना हो, नए घर में जाना हो, तो आप 10 बार सोचेंगे कि मेरा यहाँ पे बच्चे का स्कूल पास में, मेरी जॉब साथ में, मार्केट पास में, मेरी मेड साथ में है. तो सब चीजों को आप रखते हुए थोड़ा सा रजिस्ट करते हैं, बट इवेंचुअली महीने 2 महीने बाद जब आप नई जगह पे जाते हैं तो सब सेटिंग दोबारा से ठीक हो जाती है. आपका ड्राइवर भी, आपका मार्केट भी, आपका स्कूल भी, आपका जॉब भी, आपका एवरीथिंग सिस्टम जो है आपका दैट कम्स इनटू प्लेस. सो इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कि हमें ये समझना चाहिए कि ये बिहेवियर है और इस बिहेवियर को चेंज करने के लिए हम कोशिशों में लगे हुए हैं. वैक्सीन हेजिटेंसी जो जैसे WHO ने डिस्कस किया है कि ये जो वैक्सीन हेजिटेंसी है, ये डिफाइंड एज रिफ्यूजल और डिले इन टेकिंग द वैक्सीन इन स्पाइट ऑफ वैक्सीन अवेलेबल है और वैक्सीन अफोर्डेबल है. अगर ये दोनों चीजें हैं, वैक्सीन इज अवेलेबल, वैक्सीन इज अफोर्डेबल, in spite of that, if we refuse or we delay in taking that vaccine, that is called vaccine hesitancy. और ये जगह जगह पे आपने पढ़ा होगा कि ऑनलाइन सर्वे जो हैं, कहीं पे 50% लोगों ने थोड़ी रिलक्टेंस दिखाई है, कहीं पे इससे भी ज्यादा लोगों ने रिलक्टेंस दिखाई है. तो ये देखने को मिलता है. और मुझे ये लगता है कि what I understand from the vaccine hesitancy in over the years, कि ये पोलियो में भी थी थोड़ी सी शुरुआत में, बाद में सब लोगों ने एक्सेप्ट किया और हमने सक्सेसफुली पोलियो को रेडिकेट किया अपनी कंट्री से. तो ये वैक्सीन हेजिटेंसी के बहुत सारे अलग अलग रीजन्स हो सकते हैं और हैं. सबसे बड़ा रीजन मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन और डिस इन्फॉर्मेशन है. आजकल सोशल मीडिया के जमाने में जो है, जो बहुत जल्दी से जो इन्फॉर्मेशन फैलती है, अगर वहां पे अगर थोड़ी सी भी गलत इन्फॉर्मेशन, मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन, इफ इट इज circulated or it becomes viral, then it creates a problem. So one of the main reason is of course the misinformation. Apart from that, there are social reasons, religious reasons, other reasons which are unfounded, and they have to be tackled, and we are tackling it. As of now, if you consider India की situation, शुरुआत में पहले दिन बहुत अच्छा रिस्पॉन्स रहा, सेकंड डे पे थोड़ा सा हेजिटेंसी देखने में मिली, but government has taken a very aggressive campaign of information, education and communication, IEC. और उससे मुझे लगता है कि पिछले कुछ दिनों में काफी इंप्रूवमेंट हुआ है. और हमारे हॉस्पिटल में इटसेल्फ जो है परसों जो 100%, 101% जो है लोग आए हैं. 100 का स्लॉट था तो 101 लोग आए हैं. तो इट इज इम्प्रूविंग. इसका रीजंस हैं सोशल, रिलीजियस, कल्चरल, इन मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन, ये सब चीजें हैं. और इन चीजों के ऊपर जो है हमें ध्यान देना चाहिए और लोगों को, पब्लिक को अवेयर करना चाहिए, क्योंकि इसके अगर वैक्सीन है तो भी हम जो एपिडेमिक, जो पैंडेमिक इस टाइम पे है, उसको खत्म कर सकते हैं बाय इंड्यूसिंग हर्ड इम्यूनिटी टू द वैक्सीन. और जब तक सब्सटेंशियल नंबर जो हमारे 70 to 80% जो है नहीं इम्यून हो जाते, चाहे वो वैक्सीन से हो या दूसरे तरीके से हर्ड इम्यूनिटी से हो, तब तक हम इस पैंडेमिक को खत्म नहीं कर सकते हैं. मैं आई जस्ट वांट टू एंड बाय जस्ट गिविंग वन वेरी सिंपल थिंग. इफ यू आर immune either by natural infection or by the virus or the vaccine against the virus, then you become a dead end to the virus. तो आपको वायरस इन्फेक्ट करता है, you do not develop disease and you do not develop a severe disease. There's a question mark on spreading or infectivity, but definitely you become a dead end. So that your life is saved. So there are two purposes of vaccination. एक तो लाइफ सेविंग के लिए और मॉर्बिडिटी के लिए, और दूसरा पैंडेमिक को खत्म करने के लिए. If you are not protected or you are not immune by natural infection or by vaccine, then you become facilitator of the viral infection. Then you spread the infection and you also become sick. You can become sick. चाहे वो 1% में हो, चाहे वो 2% हो, then there are chances of becoming sick and going to the ICU and ventilator and mortality. 1% means if happens to me or you or anybody else, that becomes 100% for himself. So important thing is to take vaccine. Vaccines are safe, which has been shown now. It has been given to more than 2 million people in India itself, and world over. Most of the countries have started now, and there's no untoward or anything like that which should be alarming. It is safe. It should be given, and you should all come and take the vaccine, like I have taken on the first opportunity given to me.
थैंक यू सर, दैट वाज वेरी एनलाइटनिंग कि वैक्सीन बीमारी से हमारा बचाव कर सकती है, तो इसको लेना बहुत जरूरी है और अंधविश्वास में नहीं जाना चाहिए. डॉक्टर खिलनानी सर, आई वुड लाइक टू आस्क यू वन थिंग, that we understand that vaccine is safe. We have a lot of practical data on the safety of vaccine because we've seen it being given to 2 million people already in past few days. So what about the effectiveness of vaccine? What would you say? Are you prescribing it to people? Is it going to prevent disease? And there's a lot of discussion also that actually the problems of virus are not because of the virus itself, but because of the immune response of the host, of the human body. What would you say to that, sir?
So, Dr. Kesari, there are two things. One is efficacy and other is effectiveness. Yes, efficacy is said in a experimental setting or a study setting. When you when you are doing a trial like phase 3 trial, and then you assess the efficacy of a vaccine, then it is called efficacy. When you actually go into phase 4 and you actually try in the community as it is going on, so effectiveness will be known after 6 months to 1 year after this campaign goes on. Now going into the little intricacy of efficacy, the vaccine is tried in several phases. First, of course, is tried in the experimental setting in the animals. So if I talk about Covaxin, I being a member of the adjudication committee of Covaxin, I am privy to the development of vaccine. It was first tried in the primates like mice and all, and subsequently efficacy was tested in monkeys, and then it goes to the phase 1 trial. Phase 1 trial is conducted in about few individuals, which is usually less than 100. What is done to healthy volunteers, you give a vaccine and test them for immunogenicity. That means that you test them whether they are forming antibodies by doing various experimental tests on that. Subsequently, it goes into the phase 2 trial. Phase 2 trial is conducted on hundreds of individuals, and then phase 3 trial is conducted in thousands of individuals. So as far as the Covaxin is concerned, the 26,000 people are already are into the phase 3 trial. So now efficacy is tested in two ways. One, that you test their blood and actually find out that the antibodies are produced. And second way of testing is that you follow them up for a period of 6 months or 1 year and see that in the vaccine arm, how many people developed COVID, and in the placebo arm, how many develop COVID infection. So if you compare them and calculate them, and it comes out in terms of percentages. So as far as the Pfizer vaccine and Moderna vaccine is concerned, and they have calculated the efficacy, it's something like 95 and 94% respectively. As far as the Covaxin is concerned, in the animal experiment, the 92% of immunogenicity was there. And when the phase 1 and phase 2 trial was conducted, and phase 1 trial was published in Lancet on 21st of this month, the immunogenicity is some more than 90%. As far as the protection from COVID is concerned, we actually do not have exact idea about the efficacy of Covaxin, but it is estimated to be more than 62%. It could be anything between 60 to 90%. I won't take too much of the time. I'll just summarize it. The efficacy is two types. One is by blood test, and second is by seeing the number of cases who develop the disease. So, because of the pandemic situation, normal vaccine development takes about 8 to 10 years. Phase 3 trial is conducted over a period of 12 to 24 months. In view of the pandemic, emergency use authorization has been given to both the vaccines, both Covishield as well as COVID. Covishield was tested in not so much in India, but other countries like Brazil and UK. And this emergency use authorization is given for restricted use because people are dying. You can't wait for another 12 months for this phase 3 trial to publish the data and the regulatory authorities. So regulatory authorities, namely DCGI, has taken a view that there are sufficient safety data by both the vaccines for it to be used for the people to be protected from COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was very interesting, and we've got that was very interesting, and that was very useful कि लोगों को समझ में आया है कि जो वैक्सीन अभी हम यूज कर रहे हैं उससे 90% से ज्यादा प्रोटेक्शन हो सकता है. It has been documented and it is very effective. Thank you so much. I'd like to come to Dr. John, sir. Basically, as of yet, only 2 vaccines are approved and being used in India. What is the basic difference between the 2 vaccines that we've been discussing, Covaxin and Covishield? ऐसा कोई difference है, sir? Is there difference?
Okay. Globally, all vaccine researchers focused on to one particular antigen to construct the vaccine. That is the spike protein of the coronavirus. Now, the Western vaccine developers aimed to make a one-dose vaccine. That one-dose vaccine means that the antigen delivered should be quite large. To purify the spike protein in the laboratory and then to make a vaccine is laborious, time-consuming, and very expensive, and it would have delayed things. So they were looking for the fastest way of giving the spike protein in the safest way. And the many companies tried many things, and the Pfizer and Moderna approached a method of giving the spike protein in a particular way. AstraZeneca chose it a different way, and Bharat Biotech used it in a totally different way. Now let me come to the major difference. To deliver a high dose of antigen, the spike protein, both Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca decided to make the human host cells themselves to manufacture the spike protein. If you do that, you save time and you provide the best purity of the spike protein. So For that, you should know the molecular biology. There is a DNA that puts out a messenger RNA. The messenger RNA goes into the protein manufacturing part of the cell called the ribosome, and there the code is decoded and the protein is made, and that protein is the antibody. So now, once that decision was made, how do you deliver the code into the cell? The virus is an RNA virus, and therefore the virus itself is the messenger RNA. It goes into the ribosome and produces the necessary proteins, spike protein. So AstraZeneca, Covishield, its mother vaccine, transcribed the RNA into DNA. It is a little more stable, and that DNA can be introduced into a vector virus, totally different virus. You take it and introduce this DNA into that virus, but then that virus should not cause disease. So that virus was genetically manipulated so that that will not grow in the body. But the first time when the virus is exposed to the host cell, the host cell will let the virus in. That is the property of the host virus interaction. So once the virus is taken in, the virus cannot replicate. It has been rendered non-replicating. But the cargo it was carrying, namely the DNA, which will then transcribe into the messenger RNA of the spike protein alone, will go to the ribosome and manufacture the spike protein, and the spike protein will be exhibited on the cell surface, like the spike protein is exhibited on the virus surface. There's an advantage to that. If you do that, you have both the antibody arm of the immunity and the T cell arm of the immunity stimulated, because these are cells carrying the antigen. That is how the Covishield was, or the AstraZeneca was designed. Unfortunately, they found that one dose was not enough. You had to give a second dose. So they went to give the second dose at different time intervals. Different trials used different time intervals. The lowest was 4 weeks, and the highest was 12 weeks. As we all know, the 12 weeks is the best vaccine efficacy producer. 4 weeks is not all that satisfactory, but most other vaccines are given at 4-week interval. So we have settled on the 4-week interval, and we anticipate, based on international data, an efficacy level of about 70%. If you give a 12-week margin, that's an immunological phenomenon, you get about 85% efficacy. So we trade off for high efficacy for rapid development efficacy. That is the Covishield. We still do not know exactly what efficacy we can expect in India with 2 doses. The Bharat Biotech happened to have, by 2019, a high biosafety level laboratory, because they were working with chikungunya virus and Chandipura virus, and they did not want any staff to get infected. So they established a biosafety level 3 by 2019. And when 2020, when the COVID coronavirus appeared, they were ready to grow the virus in the biosafety level 3 laboratory. And so they went for the standard platform of vaccine making, grow the virus, inactivate it by chemical treatment so that the spike protein chemical structure is not at all interfered, and you try to inject that vaccine, and their phase 1 and phase 2 trials were highly successful. But there was one problem, that if you give such a vaccine, you will induce the antibody-mediated arm of the immune response, but not the cell-mediated. And for COVID, cell-mediated is extremely important. Everybody knows that. Antibody response may be not good enough, it will wane fairly rapidly. We don't know why. However, the T-cell immunity seems to be more robust, and you need that. So what they did was, they used a very clever additive, which we call an adjuvant, which should be a safe adjuvant. And right across DPT, etc., we use an adjuvant called aluminum hydroxide. Now, aluminum is the second commonest mineral on the earth, so it is quite safe for human beings. But we are giving only very, very minute amounts of aluminum. Many decades we have been using it safely. So, but if you use aluminum as an adjuvant, it will enhance the antibody-mediated response. But we want a T-cell mediated response also to be promoted. So they tagged the aluminum with a chemical substance which is an immunological stimulant. So the combination is called Al-Gel. It is a toll-like receptor 7 and 8 agonist. Technical, you don't worry about that. So the Al-Gel adjuvant increases the T-cell mediated response level and simultaneously the antibody response level. And in their animal experiments, they came to about, more than 90% expected efficacy if you try the vaccine in human beings in 2-dose schedule. Their 2-dose was a priori determined. For the Moderna and Pfizer and AstraZeneca, they hoped for a 1-dose vaccine. So AstraZeneca got stuck with 2 doses of the same vector virus, adeno5. The Russians thought differently. They said, if you use 1 vector virus, and if you inject the same vector virus 4 weeks later, you would have made antibody to the vector virus also. Will that antibody interfere with the response to the second dose? So they, a priori, decided we will not give the same virus as 2 doses. So they went for adeno26 first dose, adeno5 second dose. I'm saying this because today Oxford University is trying to use adeno26 as the booster for their adeno5 vaccine. So, but Covishield will be the same virus for 2 doses. Now, the killed virus vaccine is an age-old methodology. Once you completely inactivate the virus, your anxiety about safety is brought way down. It should work without any safety problem. And the trials have actually confirmed that. That vaccine has undergone orders of magnitude higher numbers of volunteers in India, and the reactogenicity, the adverse reactions are minimal, and so therefore it's a safe vaccine. So both these vaccines deliver the same antigen, the spike protein. One delivers it on the virus surface, non-infectious virus, and added with the adjuvant, it induces both T-cell immunity and antibody-mediated immunity. Now, Covishield has the advantage that trials of the AstraZeneca vaccine had gone on in South Africa and Brazil and in UK. US had started, so we have far more data on the safety and field level efficacy which is different from laboratory level efficacy or even phase 2 level efficacy. You need to challenge the community to natural COVID disease, some of them vaccinated, some of them placebo, then compare the frequency of COVID in the two groups, and that you derive the efficacy. That's all under strict trial basis. Once you roll out the vaccine, as said earlier, you now look for effectiveness. What will the vaccine do in the community in terms of affecting the epidemiology, the magnitude of the infection? But at the first cut, what we need the vaccine to serve us is to prevent death. That's essentially why an emergency use authorization is given, so that people who are at high risk for severe disease and death, if they are not protected with a vaccine now, prevention delayed could be prevention denied for those people. However, we have a vaccine of which the efficacy is not known. Efficacy is likely to be good. It's a promise. But in the first place, you should give a safe vaccine to such people. So safety is more important in emergency use authorization. Efficacy is the second parameter. So priority wise, India went for safety followed by efficacy, whereas the US and UK went for simultaneously. They said we will not give a vaccine of unknown efficacy, so they went for both safety and efficacy on par. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So I would request panel, Dr. Khilani sir, आप कुछ ऐड करना चाहेंगे?
No, I can't add anything to Professor John. What he has beautifully described. I just want to say that it was just a reiteration of what he said. A lot of myths are there. The take-up rate is low, not only in India but abroad also. And the main criticism was that phase 3 data or Covaxin are not in public domain, which is true actually. They are not yet published. But phase 1 and phase 2 are already out. So safety is already established. Efficacy in the form of immunogenicity is also established. So one, after all, every medicine you use is not always tested in India. So many antibiotics are used in USA. They are approved by FDA, and we start using the second day. So therefore, in the interest of the mankind, one should realize that these are the safe medications or vaccine, whatever you want to call it. And as Dr. Dhamija has pointed out, that your safety is not only your safety, the safety is of your family, your friends, your people that you meet. So when one person becomes immune, he stops the transmission also. So it is important. So my message is that please dump the myths and realize the facts and take the vaccine and save all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Dhamija, would you like to add? कुछ आप ऐड करना चाहेंगे? आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I was muted. So this has already been described beautifully by Professor Jacob John, the various kinds of vaccines. So just to make it simpler for the common man, ये जो vaccines बन रही हैं, they are basically of 4 platforms जिनको हम बोलते हैं. So one platform is messenger RNA, as Professor Jacob John described. और ये technology जो है, this technology has been it's being developed for last 10 to 12 years. These two vaccines, जो Moderna और Pfizer जो US में आई हैं, these are the vaccines based on messenger platform, messenger RNA platform, और these are the first vaccine on this platform to be approved. तो अगर ये technology इतनी अच्छी है, जिसको 12 साल लगे हैं, तो हमें इस पे ट्रस्ट करना चाहिए। और आने वाले टाइम में बहुत सारी वैक्सीन इसी टेक्नोलॉजी पे आएंगी। मोस्ट ऑफ द वैक्सीन विल कम ऑन दिस टेक्नोलॉजी। और इस टेक्नोलॉजी में सिंपली में एक ही लाइन में है कि हमारी बॉडी खुद ही जो स्पाइक प्रोटीन प्रोड्यूस कर रही है, खुद ही उसके अगेंस्ट एंटीबॉडीज प्रोड्यूस कर रही है। सो सेफ्टी इज रीअश्योर्ड कि वी आर नॉट गिविंग वायरस एट एनी, इट इज नॉट इवन हैंडल एनीवे। वायरस को कहीं पे भी आप हैंडल नहीं कर रहे हैं। यू आर जस्ट टेकिंग ए मैसेंजर आरएनए दैट फ्रॉम द वायरस इटसेल्फ, and that messenger RNA in a nanoparticle, lipid particle, is being injected into the deltoid muscle. और उसके बाद they go into the cell and they give a signal to the ribosomes, which are protein factories in our cells, to make spike protein, and then the immune system of the body produce antibodies as described. तो ये जो टेक्नोलॉजी है, ये बड़ी अच्छी टेक्नोलॉजी है और सेफ है, और आने वाले टाइम में इसी टेक्नोलॉजी पे वैक्सीन बनेगी।
So then maybe we can conclude the answer of this कि ये वैक्सीन जो आ रही हैं बहुत सेफ हैं और हम सब को लगानी चाहिए और हम सब इसे लगा सकते हैं। तो खिलनानी सर, हाँ, I was coming to you. Yes, sir.
No, just if I could talk about the myths and who should take and who should not
Yes,
take.
sir.
If you
Yes,
wish,
please.
I
Yes,
would
sir. This was the next question कि किसको नहीं लगानी चाहिए।
Yeah, actually, this has been a very common question to me. सबसे पहले तो क्वेश्चन ये पूछा जाता है कि आपने लगा ली क्या, तो उसका आंसर मैं देता हूँ मैंने लगा ली। So that clarifies a lot of things. But the thing is that there are a lot of apprehensions. One is a large proportion of people, especially 40 plus, who have diabetes, hypertension, are taking aspirin like drugs, like clopidogrel, what is commonly called as blood thinners. So there is a myth that whether they should take vaccine. So my message is that those who are on blood thinners don't have to worry about it. They can safely take. It is like it is a risk is as much as for any intramuscular injection. That is one. Those who have a serious diseases of like hemophilia, clotting disorders, they have a high risk of hematoma. For that, they should consult their hematologist whether they can take an intramuscular injection. Those who are on anticoagulation, they should also consult whether their INR or prothrombin time should not be exceedingly high. That is one. Other question which is asked to me is about those who have diseases which require immunosuppressant drug like rheumatoid arthritis or systemic lupus erythematosus or diabetes for that matter, those who are on anti-cancer drugs, those who have got kidney transplant or any kind of transplantation, those who are 85, 90 plus, those who have got chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, heart disease and congestive heart failure, whether they should, is there any additional risk because of the vaccine? So my answer to that is that this is all the reason to be on priority list, and they should take the vaccine on priority. And as discussed and described very beautifully, that none of these vaccines contain live viruses, so there is no risk of causing a viral infection or increasing the severity of viral infection should they get it. So other thing which I want to say is that when those who have got vaccine should not feel totally free of all kind of risk. The optimum immunity level will be attained approximately 42 days or 40 days after the first dose of vaccination. Although the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine have said that even after 10 days, some amount of immunity occurs. And of course, the efficacy as proven till now is something like 70 to 90%. So there still would be 30% chance that you may not get protection from that. So therefore, the COVID appropriate behavior will have to be continued on a long-term basis. And my thought process is till the time this pandemic vanishes, which may take about 6 months to 1 year, subject to the vaccine program launched. And I want to convey through you, India has amazing capacity of making vaccine, and as many as 2 billion dosages of vaccines can be prepared in India itself. So we have an amazing capability. The government is very committed to even reach to the last mile. It depends upon the people. And please don't believe the social media. Believe the experts, believe the doctors, believe your government. Otherwise, this program is going to fail. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting and very useful. Yes, sir. Sir, Dr. John, please.
Hello. Yeah. People on blood thinners, so-called blood thinner treatment, when they have some work on in the dental chair, the dentist, what we usually do is to give a short break to the anticoagulants or clopidogrel aspirin, finish the tooth work, and then restart it after a day or two. That's under medical supervision. The same thing can be done for intramuscular injection. To be quite safe.
Okay. So is it only because of the, is it only because, this is a question to panel, is it only because of the bleeding at the injection site we are so worried about the blood thinners, or there's some other reason?
Absolutely.
So, as a clinician, I think, sorry, sir, I would beg to differ from you. You know, dental work is not comparable to a intramuscular injection with a thin needle where you are putting in. Like people who are on blood thinners for life, they keep getting intramuscular injections for various reasons. They don't need to stop. Now, if
This
I
is
am doing,
exactly what I wanted to
yeah,
before, yes.
so I'm a pulmonologist. Like if I do a bronchoscopy and if I'm going to do a biopsy, surely I'll stop aspirin for a period of 3 days and clopidogrel for a period of 5 to 6 days. But if I am giving my patient a flu shot, for that matter, I give flu shot to all my patients who have got COPD, chronic bronchitis, asthma, elderly, so on and so forth. I don't stop their aspirin. So this
Exactly.
shot is not different from flu shot. So sir, I beg to disagree with you that for a simple intramuscular injection with a thin needle, I don't need to stop aspirin or clopidogrel.
Okay, sir, one question which is very much attached to this. People who are more susceptible, who need more of this COVID protection, are the people who have pulmonary disease, asthma, COPD, and all. So they might require the flu shot and the pneumococcal vaccine also. So can they all be given together?
Usually not together. The recommendation which has come is that there should be a gap of 2 weeks between the two. I don't know what is the basis for that. So 2 weeks gap is very easy because flu shot is, as on today, is optional. You know, you can give it, can wait for a couple of weeks, which we give actually every year, either in April, May, or March to April, or in the August, September, autumn and spring, as it is called. So if you give a gap of 2 weeks, it is optimum. That's fine. I don't know the basis for that.
Thank you. Dr. Vijay, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to tell that if somebody is on platelets or anticoagulants, obviously he might be having an either coronary arteries or stroke or some kind of a vascular disease ongoing. So you should be taking the advice of medical experts also. So when to stop, when not to stop, it's a you see, we always take medicine on the prescription of a doctor. So this gives me implication that even for the vaccines, do not believe the social media, believe your doctors. You don't go and buy the medicines on the advice of social media. So you avoid social media, avoid all this misinformation, believe your doctors, believe your experts whoever is caring for you, to care for you. So obviously, this kind of a propaganda on the social media about the vaccines is unfounded, unbased, and should be avoided and discouraged. Believe your doctors, believe your experts, take medical advice, whether you are eligible or not. When your turn comes, go and take the vaccines. That is the aim of this webinar, from myths to facts, myths and facts, and from illness to wellness. So we should stress upon the importance of vaccination in eradicating this pandemic and saving lives, both. So it is important that we should give the right communication. right time, and that's what we are doing today.
Yes, that's very true. The fact is that vaccines are safe, they are effective also, and they should be taken when prescribed. And all the information that you need, you should clarify and you should get from your doctors. Believe in them, and they are the ones who are going to provide you the best information about the vaccination. That was all. That was really very interesting, sir. Soon the vaccine is going to be launched, probably for the general public, and then we have a lot more people who are going to be vaccinated. They may be children, they may be pregnant women and women. So yes, sir.
Sorry, since I have to go, I have to say a
Yes, yes,
couple
no,
of
sir. Please do say
things.
whatever you
So,
feel is
so
correct.
one, of course, it is well known, and I must recite again that children below 18 years and the pregnant woman and lactating woman, it has not been tested, so it should not be given. That's the only absolute contraindication as of now to the vaccine.
That's
The commonly asked question is, somebody has had COVID recently, should you take vaccine?
yes,
That's a very common question, because a large number of people in India has had COVID, and all over the world, as we all know. Or other question is that, should you test yourself for antibodies to COVID, and then if the antibodies are positive, then you may not take vaccine. So this is the last word in this has not yet come. That is one. If you have had COVID more than 3 months prior to your scheduled vaccination, there are absolutely no question that you should take the vaccine. There's no need to go for any antibody test. Only question comes when you have had COVID within 3 months. That is questionable. Now, not every person develops antibodies. The people who are immunosuppressed, people who have got mild illness, people who have got asymptomatic COVID infection, are less likely to generate immunity. It is also true that a natural infection probably gets more immunity than vaccine. But vaccine is a vaccine, infection is an infection. As of now, there are no guidelines that people who have had COVID infection should avoid vaccine. As of now, it is general blanket thing that everyone should take a vaccine. That's my message to you. And with that, I thank ASSOCHAM for inviting me to this webinar. A great organization. For some reason, I seek your apologies and permission to leave this webinar for my hospital work. Thank you very much. And Dr. John, Dr. Dhamija, and Mr. Anil Rajput, it has been a pleasure being associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khilnani. We really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khilnani. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, would you like to add something to that, Dr. Dhamija, who in the coming future, when the vaccination is going to be given to the whole of the population, who should take vaccine or should not?
Absolutely, they should take the vaccine. Whenever your turn comes, the government has made a priority list. The priorities are according to the vulnerability, according to the risk which is involved. We are doing vaccination for the healthcare workers, first line, because they have to run the hospitals. They are at the highest risk of acquiring infection. That's number one. And secondly, they are going to run the system. So who is going to look after the COVID patients in next few months or in the coming months? So it is the doctors and healthcare workers. So they have to be, protected first. So we are protecting them. The government is protecting them so that they can look after the patient and they can run the system and they can run the healthcare facilities and hospitals. That's very important. And then the frontline workers, the ambulance workers, the police and the sanitary workers and all those who are involved in the COVID care and running this the movement against the pandemic from the government, public, private setup. So then come the people who are above 50 and the people who are less than 50 with comorbid conditions. So these priorities are as per the guidelines from the government or the guidelines from the public health authorities, as well as from the other countries also. US has also done almost similar rollout program. The UK is a little different because they are protecting the people who are 80 plus and they are in nursing homes or aged care homes. People in Australia are being protected, those who are at the airports. So we did a study which is recently published in last week only, which we have analyzed 9.5 million people of cases of COVID, 95 lakhs Indian cases which are in the public domain data. And we have found that the patients of COVID-19 or the risk of COVID-19 is higher in many states, and they should be also be given priorities when you are making a rollout. So obviously there are states which have higher proportion of cases, higher risk of comorbid conditions associated with COVID-19. So this study has been published, and we are prioritizing and we are sending it to the government so that they also can, take this cognizance and make a policy according to this. So whenever the people get the opportunity, they should come and take the vaccine. It is for their benefit and for their family benefit and for, ending the pandemic. So it is important. We should not be, hesitant at all. And this is the role of all the public health professionals, the governments, the doctors, the parents, the technology sectors, the association like SHM and other organizations to come, and civil society. It's a citizen responsibility. It's a Jan Bhagidari. So we have to participate in this movement. And we have also all together and allow the myths and misinformation around vaccination to be dispelled. So that's what my message is, that we should all come together, take the vaccine, this message, and whatever information, misinformation, disinformation is doing rounds in the social media, we should make an effort to dispel that.
Thank you, sir. Dr. John, sir, I would like to come to you. You have done a lot of work in epidemiology and other diseases, other viral diseases. When do you see this pandemic, at least in India, coming to an end? Do you foresee that in the near future, especially with the vaccination drive, sir? Any hopes for us?
That's a very good question to an epidemiologist. Thank you. Now, 2019, this epidemic did not exist. It came. And a lot of people expected that it will rise, fall, and disappear. That was a big mistake because people did not know epidemiology of all past infections. Once you allow a virus in, and it has a free hand between people, among people, it will never leave us. It will always remain. So this epidemiology has the rising limb of the epidemic, a peak, a declining limb of the epidemic, and when the declining level reaches a particular number, that we call endemic prevalence. So that number will remain forever. That is determined by one factor. How many new members are we introducing into society? That is dependent on birth rate minus the mortality below, say, about 10 years. That is the number added to the community, and that is the number that will keep on infection going on from year to year to year. That is called endemic stage. Okay, now by vaccination, you can either interfere with the epidemic or you can reduce the endemic phase and prevent any death during the endemic phase. People at risk can be protected with vaccines, they will not die. And we have already heard all comorbidities, old age people. We have missed the opportunity to curtail the epidemic by vaccination because our epidemic has already reached endemic level. For those of you who have been watching the daily numbers, you will understand that the daily detected numbers have come down to 10,000, 11,000, 12,000. So that is reflective of the fact that the epidemic is over. We are only starting vaccination now. So we can interfere with the endemicity. So if 100 people are added to the community and 50 of them are protected, so the endemic level will come down to 50. not the original number of heads added to the community. So we can interfere with the, that's what we're doing with diphtheria, whooping cough, cold, everything, measles, all diseases, we are interfering with the endemic condition to bring it down to as low a level as possible and prevent death due to any of these kind of diseases. The final word is humans with vaccines have the singular ability and opportunity to eradicate this disease. Like smallpox. Smallpox stayed with human beings for millennia and then got eradicated. Polio, millennia, then got eradicated. This one disease, if the world will get together and plan to eradicate the disease, it can be done within the first decade of the entry of this virus into human beings.
Well, this is really an amazing, heartening, and a very encouraging statement, sir. Thank you so much. That was really very interesting.
Let me add a caution.
Yes.
You are going to have a question about a new mutant variants.
Yes, sir.
Right? Before mutant variants become non-susceptible to vaccine, if they ever become, we must eradicate the mother virus.
Yes,
that's number one.
That's very important.
Number two, in Western world, farmed mink, even wild mink, are getting infected and returning the infection back to humans. The most worrisome species is the white-tailed deer, roaming wildly in the United States, North America. They are as susceptible to this coronavirus infection as humans are, and they are capable of transmitting it among themselves. Before we have a non-human reservoir of virus also to be addressed in eradication, we should eradicate it from human beings. So for these two reasons, and the reasons that it can be eradicated, the world should move towards eradication as soon as possible. The world did not express solidarity in the epidemic time. The world can become together and express solidarity in eradicating COVID-19. Back to you.
This is a great message that the world must come together to eradicate this disease. Dr. Mija, I would like to ask you a clinical question because there was news when the Russian Sputnik vaccine was launched. The Minister of Health in Russia said that people should avoid taking alcohol in the first 4 weeks. Is there any dietary restriction with vaccination in India also? Because these are different vaccines. Any of you would like to say?
So there is advice that you should take a balanced diet and have a good sleep night before the vaccination. That is the only thing. You're right, and there was a restriction of alcohol because Russians take a lot of vodka and a lot of alcohol. So there was a generic advice that not to take alcohol following the vaccinations. But we are advocating that take a balanced diet, take a good night's sleep, and avoid alcohol as a general measure. We don't want to have people alcohol at any whether vaccination or no vaccination. So don't smoke and don't alcohol. So that is my advice to everyone. They are injurious to health and they're cutting short your life. So why to unnecessarily take something which is cutting short your life? So I just want to add something. A very common question people ask is that generally the development of a vaccine takes 10 to 12 years, 15 years. This time we are under 1 year. We have 2 vaccines in India and 2 other vaccines in US. So how is it possible? So people have this little question in their mind. So I just want to reassure them. मैं आपको हिंदी में बताता हूँ that normally it takes years, normally it takes 5 to 10 years, and Ebola vaccine took less than even 5 years. But what has happened in this time, that this pandemic was declared, by WHO in March. But before that, the Chinese were able to isolate the genome, identify the genome in January 10th or 11th. So उन्होंने क्या किया? They shared this genomic sequence with the all over the world. And US में जो दोनों companies हैं, Moderna and Pfizer, within 48 hours they were ready for a vaccine genome or genome sequencing. and they started working on that. Not only this, the US government came up with the Operation Warp Speed, जो उन्होंने रखा military style में, कि we need to have the vaccine by the end of 2020 only. So with this, all the institutions across the world, they all came together. Even NIV Pune also gave a viral strain to the ICMR and Bharat Biotech, and they transported during lockdown from Pune to Hyderabad. So obviously, this has been effort from collaborative effort all over the world. Jitne bhi organizations, and they have all come together to make a vaccine. That's number one. That is why it has been possible to produce vaccines in a short span. Number two is that normally you have a preclinical studies, animal lab studies, and then animal studies, and then you go to approval, regulator, get approval for phase 1. You complete phase 1, and then you go back to the regulator for approval for phase 2. वो आपने पूरा किया phase 2, then you go back to the approval for phase 3, 100, and then phase 2 1,000, and phase 3 thousands. So it is one by one, the horizontal levels, and then this. What has happened this time is that all these phases have been combined. So the regulator has said, if it is safe, you can do phase 2 and phase 3 together in vertical, so that you can have, the time to cut short the time. So phase 1, phase 2 together, phase 2, phase 3 together, so that you have, with what you were able to do in 5 years, you have been able to do in 6 months. So number one, all over the world. Number two, regulators support for clubbing the trials. And number three, the government support. The US government actually said, you take a risk of stockpiling the vaccine. आप बनाना शुरू कर दो. If you incur a loss, you will support that. The Moderna took that offer, and it is NIH vaccine, as you know. The Pfizer did not take that vaccine, and they had their own resources. But there was a support from the US government and from the other governments, like Government of India, that start making the vaccine. By the time approval comes, you will already have a stockpiling of the vaccine, so that next day we can start vaccinating the people, or within a week or within 2 weeks. So this has been only possible because of massive effort across the world. Many organizations, regulators, approvals, all phases together, and that is why, and the technology which was going on for 10 to 12 years for messenger RNA, and suddenly they have used that technology and it has been successful. So it is not that there has been cut, the corners have been cut, or there have been shortcuts, or the regulator has not seen the data. There has been rigorously screened, and the independent body of even FDA is absolutely a transparent body. It is in public. When all the experts sat together, it was in the public domain. It was online, real time. People could see that the experts are discussing the data, and there was 20-0 in one vaccine and 16-4 voting in another vaccine. In India also, there is a subject expert committee which has gone through case by case and seen all through what has happened, and then only they have given emergency use authorization in the view of the pandemic. So obviously, one need to be reassured that it is safe. Everything has been taken into account. There has been very, very rigorous scrutiny of the data and the trials, and then only emergency use authorization has come.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. John, I'd like to come back to you. I would shortly like to ask you one thing about the mutant strains that you also mentioned, and that we are hearing first of all the strain from UK. Then there are mutant strains we've heard in Brazil, in South America, in South Africa, which are quite different from the ones that we have now. What would you add on to that, sir?
We don't know the full fact yet. This virus is prone to mutations, that is well known, and if the mutations are random, the mutations that allow the virus to spread fast takes over the slower moving mutants. So that is the phenomenon what we are seeing. As long as the virus uses the ACE2 receptor and the receptor fit is not interfered with, the other mutations are not particularly important except for ease of transmission as far as the virus is concerned. The moment the receptor binding area is affected by mutation, this virus cannot survive. So it is between these 2 points, non-survival, easy transmission, there is a range of mutations that have thrown up surprises in Brazil, in South Africa, and in UK, what we have is not the Chinese original vaccine. There is already a variant that took over the whole world. Nobody talked about it, but it is not the Wuhan virus today. It is the next mutant variant that has taken over the world. From there, the British, the South African, and the Brazilian are occurring. So as far as we know, all vaccines seem to work reasonably well, but the efficacy may range a little bit, may fall a little bit, but no vaccine is expected to be non-useful against these variants. The advantage of mRNA vaccine is if a variant becomes a vaccine escape mutant, that it can overcome the vaccine immunity and go forward, you can immediately create the messenger RNA and create a new vaccine. That's the beauty of the messenger RNA methodology. All the rest of the platforms, like inactivated virus or the adenovirus vector, will take time to create those vaccines. So we have to wait and watch. Today, we are not very much worried about the new variants. We think that even if the variants are slightly slightly less in protection against vaccines, I think by increasing the vaccine coverage, we may be able to overcome that difficulty. But we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Dhamija, I would like to ask you a short question. Do the elderly people are also advised the vaccine, like people above 70? Because this question comes up to me quite frequently.
Before that, I answer that question, and let me just touch upon the mutant virus that we are talking about.
Yes, yes, yes.
On that, it spreads fast. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes. Please.
Okay. So it is well known that it spreads fast. Infectivity is 50 to 70% more than the parent virus. So having said that, it is also said that it doesn't cause more severe disease or more hospitalization, but definitely it spreads more easily, and infectivity or R naught is more than 1.7. So what does it mean to us? It means that even though the mortality is 1 to 2%, if one person infects 100 people, then the ICU admission mortality is 1 to 2. If the same person with mutant virus spreads to 170 people, the mortality or the absolute numbers of people dying becomes 3 or 4. Number of people going to ICU becomes double, or maybe 1.5 times, 1.7 times. So it should be taken a little more seriously because it spreads, infectivity is more, so the absolute numbers will go up. So rather than 1 or 2 people dying of one person or one infectivity, R not 1 or the person's absolute number of people dying from the mutant virus is more, because it infects more people and more people go to ICU and more people die. So obviously we need to think about that also. And there is a data from BharatBat. It looks like that it also covers the mutant strain as of now. So obviously the time will tell how much that the impact has that on our general population. But having said that, of course, messenger RNA vaccines can be manufactured very easily with a different change in the genomic sequence. So obviously it is much easier, and so would probably be the others also, but that would time will tell. So the subgroup of people, elderly, yes, as of now, the recommendation is everyone from more than 50, 60, 70 should get the vaccine. There were few reports of Sweden, the Norwegian reports coming up, but that was compared to their naturally occurring mortality in those aged care homes. Obviously, that should not deter us for vaccinating elderly. Elderly people have comorbid conditions. They are at a more risk because the mortality is higher in that population group. So I would strongly urge all of you to have your parents, grandparents get vaccination as and when the opportunity comes.
Thank you so much. Dr. John, sir, I would like to come to you. I would like to ask you a question which I personally find very interesting. Since past decade or so, we are seeing a lot of viral infectious disease coming up, taking epidemic proportions, and then going back. And you've been working with some of these diseases and have been a pioneer. Do you feel that the humanity is doing sins, and it is that we are paying for the sins that we have been doing? Why is it so that why are we seeing these epidemics since past 10 since past decade or so, and this COVID is just a culmination in a way of those? Is it so, sir? What's the reason for this?
That's a good question, both to the virologist and to the philosopher. You know, most of the diseases that we see today and take for granted, including measles and tuberculosis, polio, all this started many millennia ago as pandemics and then settled down in the human beings. Having said that, the pace, the speed with which pandemics appear has become faster. Now, influenza was 1918 first, then 1957 next, then 1968, and then 2009. So influenza speed has not picked up. But this coronavirus, 2003 was the first pandemic, SARS. WHO and all the global leaders got together and immediately put the fire down. It was eradicated from 27 countries. Okay, and at that time there was no vaccine. It is purely by non-pharmacological interventions, because the people developed fever before they were able to spread the infection. So if you trace back, where did you travel? Where are you coming from? Have you got in contact with somebody? And if you have fever, isolate them, strict isolation. That's the only way we managed to eradicate that pandemic. Some 1,000 people got infected or something like that. I don't remember the actual number. Not 1,000, a few thousand got infected. About 800 and odd died. And we got rid of it. Whereas this coronavirus is a big pain in the neck. Never ever have humans confronted a virus like this. It goes to ACE2, which is the one cell surface receptor that modulate blood supply to tissues and organs. And if you meddle with that, then the organs do not get enough blood supply and the comorbidities are made worse. So this virus came from nature. 5 years earlier, a bat virus had been detected in South China, which is 98 or 99% genetically identical to this virus. So this is probably a virus that existed in nature for a long time. The virologists who study the existence of virus for a long time certify that this is a millennia-old virus, but humans never encountered it before. When humans encounter a new disease, it's very easy to blame God. For our mistakes, we blame God. We drive rash, get an accident, you blame God. So no, in the physical world, man is put in a position to think, act, intervene, design the physical world. We can make mistakes and you will have punishment. Not by God, we are punishing ourselves. So these kind of diseases are unpredictable. You don't blame anybody. When you see it, you take the bull by the horn and then say, what next? How can we address this issue forward? So we can have another pandemic anytime. Which virus, we will never know. We can have a influenza pandemic anytime. We hear about the bird flu all over the place. Now, the pandemic flu starts between birds and pigs and such animals, and then spill over to humans. Depends upon which virus in a particular year develops as a avian flu. So yes, we have got to be eternally vigilant for any new infections appearing anywhere in the world. If it is Africa, like Ebola, fortunately it is not respiratory transmitted, so it's only confined there. Influenza is respiratory transmitted. It travels within a week. It can reach the whole world within a month, definitely. This coronavirus also has shown the same thing. So we have got to be eternally vigilant. Our health system should be alerted to any new diseases that you have not seen previously, that all doctors must be warned to diagnose every disease. And if you see something that is not diagnosable, alert the public health system that we have found something different. So please investigate it. China did not do that for September, October, November, December, for 4 months. It didn't do that. If they had done so, we would have caught this epidemic much earlier and the world would have been much better prepared. I'm not blaming China. They did not expect this to happen. They were working in their own best interest by not being transparent. Okay, they also have this issue of their own prestige, global standing. So this is a human temptation. So pandemics are for real. Anytime we can have another pandemic, we should be prepared.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Dhamija, you want to add something?
I just want to give a concluding comment because we are running over time.
Yes.
This pandemic, which is unprecedented, is a humanitarian crisis. So obviously, we have a vaccine now, and to best of my knowledge, this is the first pandemic in the history to be terminated by the vaccine. So we need to build trust. What we are doing, we need to gain the public confidence, and all of us should work together as citizens to make this successful vaccination program. I'll appeal through you, all those who are watching this webinar, please take your vaccine whenever your turn comes, and we contribute to ending the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. John. Thank you so much, Dr. Dhamija, and Dr. Kilani was here with us. This was a great session, I think, and the message is. So, you want to add something, Dr. John? You wanted to say something? You wanted to say something?
Remember, vaccine protects against disease, not necessarily infection. And therefore, we have to be protect ourselves against disease by vaccination, and yet, for the time being, follow the, as Dr. Dhanija said, wearing mask and hand hygiene, and keeping some distance between people, not overcrowding. If everybody has a mask, you can come within 2 feet. Okay, still you are protected. So keep well, stay educated. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. This was very interesting, and the message is we should take vaccine when the opportunity comes. I would request Shri Anil Rajput ji to give a vote of thanks to our esteemed faculty. Sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kesri. Thank you very much, Dr. John Jacob. It has been an extremely educative session where you extensively covered about the process that goes on in developing vaccine, created confidence that whatever has been done is the best, and people should not have any kind of inhibition. And this is a very, very positive comment, and how it can be eradicated. You know, you give a very nice statement that world solidarity is necessary to eradicate it. And I'm sure people who are listening, they will carry this message to as many people and convey that, you know, we all have to work collectively to fight this deadly virus. Thank you very much, Dr. John. Dr. Mija, you have been always very, very excellent and lucid and to the point on every issue. And, you know, the very wonderful statement you made that, you know, although it is 1% people who may be affected, but for you, if you get it, it is 100% for you. So therefore, to keep yourself safe, you have to go and get yourself vaccinated. You know, you can't take any chance. And many examples were given how it is quite safe, even if you are not well or you are under any medication. This vaccine can be taken, and you should always believe in your doctor. Okay. Whenever you need any advice, go to your doctor, talk to him, and he will give you the right way forward, which will be in your best interest. So thank you very much, Dr. Damija, and thank you, Dr. Kesri, for keeping the whole session extremely engaging, pertinent, to the point, and all the audience must have benefited from all the probing questions that you raised with all the doctors. Dr. Khilnani is not there, and I tried to thank him while he was leaving, but it is my duty to kind of thank him for sparing his valuable time during this period. And SHM team, who's been working tirelessly during this pandemic period to give the message that how you can remain free from illness by giving them several interactive session messages from the doctors. And doctors have come forward and shared their experiences for the benefit of the society. Many thanks to all of you. Thank you very much, and thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was very informative and very interesting.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Very interesting.
My pleasure. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Have a nice day. Have
Okay,
a nice
sir.
lunch.
Bye. You
Yeah.
too, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Bye.
थैंक यू सर. सर क्लोज कर दें सेशन.
हाँ हाँ करो करो, मैं बंद करूँ.
ओके सर, थैंक यू.
Okay.